video evidence from the incidents. We're doing so under the officer-involved video evidence release protocol signed by the police chiefs and the Sheriff's Association. In the past year, law enforcement has prioritized officer-involved shooting cases and investigations and reviews, given the public's heightened interest in these incidents. Of course, a warning, any broadcast outlets that may be live streaming this news conference are advised these videos contain graphic, violent content that is not appropriate for a general audience, including children. Once this briefing is over, copies of the letters that we will be provided to you, the ones that we give to law enforcement, and copies of the videos will be made available to you. Today we're also releasing updated statistics on officer-involved shootings that occurred in San Diego for the past 4 years. As you may know, our office compiled a 20-year comprehensive report on officer-involved shootings that's posted on our website. Race is just one aspect of the data that we compiled. A more complete report will be forthcoming when we reach the 5-year mark. Notable, though, in these latest statistics is that there were a total of 34 individuals fatally shot and 27 non-fatally shot over the 4-year period. Our review of the shootings reveals that 27 of the individuals who were shot were white, and we're talking about fatal shootings now. 26 were Hispanic, 5 were black, and 3 were Asian. This chart shows the breakdown. All of the updated stats will be in the documents that you're provided at the end of this briefing. An overview of 5 incidents we're discussing today also shows some common features and threads present in officer-involved shooting cases. These include that the person shot often has mental health issues and/or substance abuse issues. These cases also demonstrate the frequent requirement of an officer for split-second analysis under tense and rapidly unfolding circumstances. Before we begin, a few reminders. This video evidence is exempt under the California Public Records Act. Our decision to release it does not otherwise waive that privilege. We do not plan to release any additional evidence from the investigatory files at this time and continue to claim the privilege we're entitled to under the law. The media has a responsibility to decide which portions of the video are ultimately broadcast and posted online, and to respect, I hope, the impact that broadcasting the video has on family members. They also have a duty to put these videos into context. Presented out of context, a video clip can lead to incorrect and sometimes inflammatory narratives about an incident. With context, video evidence can aid the public in understanding why and how an officer-involved shooting occurred. Pursuant to the release of this policy, we only release video that is relevant to our legal analysis of the shooting. So in other words, the videos that show what happened in the moments before and leading up to the shooting are what we'll show. Faces of the individuals are blurred out of respect for their privacy, with the exception of one video we're releasing today. In general, the video will stop once the individual who is shot is no longer an immediate threat and no more shots are fired. The purpose, again, of the district attorney's review of officer-involved shootings is to determine whether or not criminal charges should be filed. In other words, was a crime committed? We review all the evidence to determine what the facts are, and what we can prove with evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. We evaluate the evidence, including the physical evidence, witness statements, lab analysis, medical evidence, or other sources of information. We do not review issues regarding department policies, training, tactics, discipline, less lethal force options, or whether there is civil liability. Under California law, peace officers may use deadly force to protect themselves from the threat of death or great bodily harm. Just as with any other citizen, the law of self-defense is available to peace officers as well. Under the law, an officer's use of deadly force is reasonable if the officer has probable cause to believe that the suspect poses a significant threat of death or serious physical injury to the officer or to others. Officers also have additional rights because of the nature of their job. Peace officers may use deadly force in the course of their duties under circumstances not available to members of the public. The first incident is the fatal shooting of David Moya on August 5th of 2016. Mr. Moya's mother called 911 to report her son threatened to kill her. She stated she believed her son had an undiagnosed mental health condition and was suicidal. When deputies arrived in front of Mr. Moya's home, his mother told them she was scared for her life and her son had knives stashed all around the house. Mr. Moya's mother opened the door and one of the deputies opened it wider so they could look inside. A deputy made announcements for Mr. Moya to come down and to talk to them. A few moments later, Mr. Moya stepped onto the landing of a stairway leading to the second floor. He was holding a large compound bow. The arrow was pointed right at the deputies. A deputy then heard the sound of a bow being released and realized Mr. Moya had fired the arrow at them. The arrow missed the deputies and struck the front door frame. The deputies retreated. More deputies responded to the scene and made several pleas during lengthy negotiation, which went on for over an hour, for Moya to surrender from outside of the house. Moya fired a second arrow at the deputies from a second-story window as the deputies waited in the street below. One deputy felt the arrow brush past his leg. A deputy shot at Moya, but missed. Mr. Moya then reappeared and fired a third arrow at the deputies. One deputy yelled at Mr. Moya and told him not to shoot them again. 3 sheriff's deputies later told investigators they believed Moya was about to strike deputies with an arrow that was capable of killing a person. The investigation revealed that Moya was armed with something called a compound bow, very much like the one in this photo, which uses a system of cables and pulleys, increasing the speed and striking power of an arrow. The arrows used by Mr. Moya during the event were broad head arrows consisting of 3 razor-sharp steel edges designed to penetrate an animal's hide and can penetrate Kevlar body armor. They are primarily used for hunting and killing large game. Toxicology results showed Moya had cannabinoids in his system at the time. Sheriff's deputies, as you know, are not equipped with body-worn cameras yet. However, there is a citizen cell phone video, which is evidence of the incident from across the street. In the video, Mr. Moya is in the upstairs window located in the upper right-hand side of the screen. It's difficult, if not impossible, to see the arrows being shot from the location, and we will see the video now. Then these are photos from the scene showing the arrows that were shot at the deputies. The DA's review determined the deputies fired in their own defense and in the defense of other deputies. Based on these circumstances, the facts and the law, they bear no criminal liability for their actions. The next officer-involved shooting is the fatal shooting of Mr. Trenton Lohman on August 18th of last year. Sheriff deputies responded to a radio call of a suspicious person possibly burglarizing cars in a parking lot of an automotive center. A deputy arrived and saw Mr. Lohman leaning into the hood of a pickup truck with a knife in his hand. The deputy ordered Mr. Lohman to drop the knife. Mr. Lohman put the knife down, walked to a Toyota Sequoia parked next to the truck. He reached into the driver's side of the vehicle, produced a semi-automatic handgun, and pointed it at the sheriff's deputy. The deputy responded by firing at Mr. Lohman. Lohman managed to get out of the Sequoia and drive through the parking lot. Two other deputies both heard the gunshots as they arrived on the scene. Their patrol cars blocked the exit, preventing Mr. Lohman from leaving. Mr. Lohman stopped the Sequoia and got out and ran toward the deputy's marked patrol car, which was unoccupied. Two deputies fired at Mr. Lohman as he got into the patrol car and drove off, exiting to Poway Road. The deputies began to pursue Mr. Lohman, who was now driving the marked sheriff's patrol car. Other deputies joined in the pursuit. They pursued Mr. Lohman to the intersection of Poway Road and Espola. Mr. Lohman stopped the patrol car at the intersection and carjacked the driver of a Chevy Blazer who was stopped in traffic. Mr. Lohman, with a gun in his hand, forced the driver out of the car and drove off in the Blazer. A deputy fired at Mr. Lohman, who drove a short distance down Poway Road before driving off the road and stopping in an unpaved area. Deputies approached Mr. Lohman with a canine unit, removed him from the Blazer, and began administering first aid. Mr. Lohman was pronounced dead at the scene. An autopsy revealed that Mr. Lohman had methamphetamine in his system. During the subsequent investigation, 6 witnesses said they heard the gunshots at the initial scene on Poway Road and described hearing commands like, "Stop," "Don't do it," "Keep your hands out of the car," "Drop the gun." Pointing a gun at deputies, stealing a marked sheriff's unit, leading deputies on a pursuit, and ultimately sticking a gun in the stomach of a motorist stopped in traffic put the community at risk. It reasonably caused the deputies to believe someone would be killed or seriously injured by Mr. Lohman if they did not act immediately to end his reckless and threatening behavior. Based on these facts, the evidence, and the law, the deputies' use of deadly force in this instance was reasonable, and they bear no criminal liability for their actions. The San Diego County Sheriff's Department is currently not equipped with body-worn camera, so there's no video that exists of the shooting from either of these two locations. A citizen, though, did attempt to take cell phone video, but it does not show the actual shooting at the initial scene. Likewise, surveillance cameras at the initial scene did not capture the shooting. The next officer-involved shooting case involved the fatal shooting of Mr. Sergio Weick in August of last year. Sheriff's investigators had developed information Mr. Weick was armed with a firearm and selling narcotics. Mr. Weick was a documented gang member with a history of weapons, violations, and confrontations with law enforcement. After failing to appear for an appointment with his probation officer, the probation officer authorized his arrest. 1 week later, Mr. Weick was seen leaving the home of another gang member. When deputies attempt to stop him for the probation violation, Weick led them on a pursuit. At some points during the pursuit, he drove at high speeds, running red lights, and driving on the wrong side of the road. Also during the pursuit, a detective indicated over the radio that he became aware Mr. Weick was armed. Weick eventually crashed his car and ran from deputies. 2 deputy sheriffs, who were aware Mr. Weick was believed to be armed with a firearm, chased Mr. Weick. After running through a condo complex, down an embankment, Mr. Weick stumbled and landed with his right knee on the ground. One deputy saw Mr. Weick reach into his waistband and pull up from his waistband, fumbling with something. The deputy yelled several times for Mr. Weick to show his hands or put his hands up. Mr. Weick ignored those commands and kept trying to pull up on his waistband. Fearing the suspect was pulling a gun, the deputy shot Mr. Weick. The second deputy saw Mr. Weick reaching for what appeared to be a gun on his left hip. Fearing he was about to be shot, that deputy also shot Mr. Weick. A witness to the incident told investigators he saw deputies run after Mr. Weick and heard them yell, "Stop, Sergio." Another witness said he heard someone shout, "Put your hands up," 2 or 3 times prior to hearing gunshots. During the subsequent investigation, it was determined that Mr. Weick had a fixed blade in a sheath on his left side of his belt and another knife on the right side of his belt. An autopsy showed methamphetamine and amphetamines in his system. No video exists of this incident because the San Diego County Sheriff's Department is currently not equipped with body-worn cameras. The next incident we reviewed was the fatal shooting of Mr. Juan Carlos Fernandez. Mr. Fernandez had been issued a court-ordered restraining order forbidding him from contacting his former wife, but he ignored the order and continued to harass and stalk her. On November 13th, Mr. Fernandez went to his former wife's residence, her family's residence. His ex-wife's father went outside to talk to Mr. Fernandez. The ex-wife's boyfriend then arrived, confronted Mr. Fernandez, and the two began to fight. Mr. Fernandez walked back to his car and retrieved a handgun. Fernandez began chasing the boyfriend, threatening to shoot him. The boyfriend ran from the scene, and Mr. Fernandez grabbed his ex-wife by the hair while holding the handgun. The woman's father attempted to pull Fernandez off his daughter, and Mr. Fernandez shot the father in the head, killing him. Mr. Fernandez then shot his ex-wife's grandfather and mother, injuring the grandfather and killing the mother, who was trying to shield her daughter with her body. The bullet which killed the mother also struck Fernandez's ex-wife in the chest. Mr. Fernandez grabbed his ex-wife by the hair and again dragged her to the vehicle, attempting to shove her into the car. Mr. Fernandez placed his ex-wife in a headlock, put the gun to her head, and pulled the trigger. The ex-wife heard the gun click, but it did not fire. A San Diego police officer arrived on the scene and saw Mr. Fernandez standing in the street holding his ex-wife by the head with his handgun pressed up against her temple. The officer ordered Mr. Fernandez multiple times to drop the weapon and get on the ground. Fearing Mr. Fernandez was going to shoot him, the hostage or another officer who was on the scene, at a point in time when the ex-wife was able to pull away, the officer fired one shotgun round to Mr. Fernandez's head, killing him instantaneously. Body-worn camera footage shows both officers arriving and then running on foot toward the scene where commands were given to Mr. Fernandez to get on the ground. Fernandez responded by shouting no several times. He is seen dragging Miss Gonzalez away while holding her around the neck with his arm. Video from the San Diego Police Department helicopter shows the shootings and moments leading up to the officer's arrival. Body-worn video camera shows the officer's perspective as he arrived on the scene and responded.
We're still going 87. It looks like it's going to be street side on Marlboro.
We're getting information that he pulled into a vehicle, a Camaro.
Okay, we're going 87. He's still struggling with her out in the street, so they're in the middle of the street now. Okay, so officers are going 97. Looks like he's got a gun. Okay, shots fired. Suspects down. Let's start medics and then start get additional units here 97.
As you can imagine, the impact is one more. Okay, thank you. As you can imagine,
There's two perspectives. Yeah, this is the second.
okay, excuse me. Always a technological issue.
So this is the second
As you can imagine, the impact of Mr. Fernandez's actions upon this, his ex-wife's family have been devastating. The officer's use of deadly force was expected and reasonable under the circumstances, and he bears no criminal liability for his actions because they were legally justified under the facts, the evidence, and the law. The final incident we reviewed was the fatal shooting of Mr. Alfred Olango. On September 27th, the El Cajon Police Department received several calls from Mr. Olango's sister. She reported that her brother was behaving erratically and requested officers to take him to a mental health facility. She also reported that he was walking in and out of the street, almost getting struck by traffic. El Cajon police officer Richard Gonzalez arrived and located Mr. Olango in the parking lot of a taco shop. The officer saw Mr. Olango's right hand in his right front pants pocket. The officer told Mr. Olango multiple times to remove his hand from his pocket, but Mr. Olango did not. Mr. Olango's sister was also present and pleaded with Mr. Olango to take his hand out of his pocket. A witness watching Mr. Olango could tell Mr. Olango had something else in his pocket besides his hand. Mr. Olango continued to keep his hand in his pocket. A second officer arrived and approached from Mr. Olango's left side with a taser. While our review doesn't look at policy or procedure, because there have been questions raised, it's worth noting that it is common police practice for one officer to arm themselves with lethal backup in case the less lethal option is not effective. Mr. Olango suddenly pulled what the officer believed was a gun from his pocket and took a two-handed shooting stance while pointing the object at the first officer. One of the officers fired 4 rounds, striking Mr. Olango fatally. Almost simultaneously, the second officer fired his taser. The metallic object that Mr. Olango pointed was later discovered to be an electronic cigarette vaping device. There were 6 witnesses that were interviewed who observed the shooting and the events leading up to it. Witnesses saw Mr. Olango walking around the parking lot prior to the shooting, and they say he appeared to be agitated. A witness said they saw Mr. Olango with his hand in his pocket, and it was apparent to the witness that Mr. Olango had some other item in his pocket besides his hand. Witnesses told investigators that Mr. Olango refused to remove his hand from his pocket when ordered to do so. And they also described Mr. Olango suddenly removing his hand from his pocket, pointing both hands in a manner consistent with taking a shooting stance toward the officer. One witness told investigators she thought the object in Mr. Olango's hand was a gun that was based on his motion. She added, quote, "The cop had every right, shoot or be killed." On the cell phone video, another witness can be heard speaking in Spanish, saying, quote, "The cop was in the right, he wouldn't take out his hand." The investigation showed that the manner in which Mr. Olango removed his right hand from his pocket is critical in determining whether the officer's fear of being shot was reasonable under the circumstances. Instead of simply bringing his hand out and showing it to be empty, or even taking out the vaping device and holding it to his side or throwing it to the ground, Mr. Olango removed his hand by quickly transitioning into a shooting stance, extending both arms and hands up in front of him, and simulating the firing of a weapon directly at the officer. You can see on the video that the officer ducks down immediately to try to protect himself because he perceives he's about to get shot. As a result, the officer decided that his needed act was having immediately recognized both an object that appeared to be a gun and the accompanying shooting stance. As I mentioned, there were 2 videos that captured this incident. Both were released to the media in the days immediately following the shooting. First, you'll see the video, the surveillance video, then you'll see the citizen cell phone video. Because the incident unfolds very quickly from a distance, we've also slowed down and zoomed into a portion of the cell phone video, something that has not previously been released. In it, you can see Mr. Olango taking a shooting stance and even making a motion as if he'd fired a gun and that he even recoiled. Because these videos were released previously without the blurring of the faces, no blurring has been added. Here's where we slowed it down. As you're no doubt aware, the fatal shooting of Mr. Olango has gained international media coverage and sparked protest. In many ways, the response in San Diego County to this officer-involved shooting is reflective of a bigger picture and conversations that are happening across the nation. We're living in a time where the actions of police officers are under scrutiny more than ever, especially when it comes to police shootings. We're also at a time when we're expecting law enforcement to deal with the problems that society isn't effectively dealing with: mental health, drugs, poverty, and homelessness. The U.S. Supreme Court, in its ruling in Graham versus Connor, determined that the perspective that is the most critical under the law to our review in determining the actions of the law enforcement were whether or not they were legally justified is that of a reasonable officer and what they knew or reasonably believed at the critical time. In other words, what is reasonable is determined by not only what the officer says, but what all the physical evidence and witness statements prove. Without context, without all the facts and the evidence, without witness statements, incomplete narratives go viral in minutes before law enforcement has completed a full investigation. That said, I continue to believe that the public release of video evidence in cases like this is a positive step forward. The District Attorney's Office works to maintain open communication and good relationships with all of the communities we serve. We all have a role to play, and my role is to follow the law. The law is specific about how we are to evaluate actions of officers for possible criminal liability. It says that we must determine whether an officer reasonably believed his or her life or the lives of others were in danger. Again, that same Supreme Court case has ruled that the law recognizes that police officers are often forced to make split-second decisions in circumstances that are tense, uncertain, and rapidly evolving. These are the court's rules, not mine, words. As prosecutors, we have an ethical duty to follow the law and only charge individuals when we believe we have proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The officer-involved shooting of Mr. Olango has been carefully reviewed by experienced prosecutors and investigators in our Special Operations Division. I also reviewed the evidence carefully, and along with the investigator and prosecutor handling the case, I personally visited the scene of the shooting, which helps me better understand and put into context the events as they unfolded. After carefully reviewing the facts, the evidence, and the law, we've determined the officer's use of deadly force was reasonable under the circumstances, and he bears no criminal liability for his actions. If one objectively examines the facts, the only reasonable conclusion is that the officer's actions were legally justified and understandable. I realize that this decision will upset some in the community. I understand the desire among some to voice their anger and disagreement over this decision. But it's also my genuine hope that people can direct anger into a constructive conversation that focuses on positive change. Law enforcement does not want fractured relationships with the community. We're all part of the community. The circumstances surrounding Alfred Olango's death are tragic. His family has lost a son, a brother, a father, a husband. I don't take any sides but the side of justice, and taking that position often never pleases everyone. Moving forward, we will continue working with the community just as we always have. Now I'm going to open it up to questions, and let's keep it one at a time because I'm going to answer your questions. Dana, you look like you're ready.
I'm ready. Was the Olango family notified of the decision in this case prior to this news conference?
The Olango family, through their attorneys, were notified that we were having the press conference today and that the video would be displayed.
But not the decision itself?
But not the decision itself. Artie?
Bonnie, before the news conference, you showed a graphic related to the racial breakdown of fatal shooting victims. Why did you do that before showing the videos? What was the context of that and the reason for doing that before showing the videos?
Because each time we did the 20-year study, and each time we've done an officer-involved shooting, up until now we haven't kept track of it, so this is where we are at this point in time. And again, after the 5-year mark, which would be the end of this year, we'll do a much more comprehensive one like we did before that not only talks about race, but also even the things I pointed out here, how many have mental health issues, how many people have drug or substance abuse issues, all of those things.
So to clarify, in terms of your presentation, showing us that graphic is separate from the videos that we saw and the analysis, the legal reviews of the shootings, as opposed to not putting them in the context of the shootings. Like, for instance, when you see that, I believe the figure with regards to African Americans was 8%, then we show the Olango case because there's been some anger and upset members of that community. So I guess the question is, are you drawing a relationship to those statistics and the reviews that you presented today?
No, they are just statistics of an overall view of all the cases we've handled thus far.
Sorry for that.
It's okay.
With respect to the Olango shooting, again, there have been some call or some talk about a federal investigation, or at least, I don't know if one has happened, but there was some talk of he's requesting one. To your knowledge, has there been some kind of accompanying investigation by federal authorities into that shooting or any of the others you discussed today?
Well, the only thing I can tell you is that as our protocol has called for, The FBI sits at what we call the 3-day briefing, where all of the officers who are investigating the case, our office and the U.S. Attorney's Office, participate, so they get to see the evidence right away. And from that point on, though, they don't communicate with us. Carlos?
I think that the graphic that we're talking about is the latest so far, 2016.
Right.
And has this been given to the police departments in order to probably take the results of the statistics showing the ethnicity, which groups have more problems maybe, or situations like for future training and things like that to deal with the community and especially with the cases?
We haven't shown this particular one yet, although I believe it. I'm not sure if it's in the letter. Is it in? It's in the. It's in your packet. But it is something that we do on a regular basis, is share this information with law enforcement so that law enforcement can look at it from whether there are training issues or issues that need to be addressed. And here in San Diego County, we meet monthly to look at how we can do things better and how we can work with the community. We've invited the community in to talk with us. And we continue to do that, and I think we have more work to do.
Where are we with body-worn cameras? You mentioned several times the county doesn't have them. What's your position on pushing?
Well, I have no influence on the sheriff. So I think the sheriff, though, is examining different technologies because as San Diego PD began, although it was already body-worn cameras were used in other areas, I want to say Escondido was at the beginning, but the technology has changed significantly. And there are issues that relate to technology as well as storage. So I think the sheriff is doing an important job in vetting all of the technology to see if we can. We didn't see it in these videos, but as we've seen in the past, the videos, 30 seconds, first it was 2 minutes and then it went to 30 seconds where there was a buffer so you couldn't hear anything. They're working on making it so that you can hear even more. They're working on all aspects of that. So I think that's where that status is, but you need to, of course, talk to the sheriff about where he's at in that process and, what the availability is.
How helpful is body-worn camera video to your analysis compared to other types of video, like surveillance, like cell phone camera video?
Well, I think they all show perspective, but I think what's important is what you see from them is that you need them all to make an informed decision. Because as you saw with the officers that were running, you couldn't see a whole lot. When they stopped, you saw their steering wheel. But that's helpful because you see how they're running and how fast they have to move. But you also saw, like in the Able video, you could see not color or not defined, but you could see bodies, you could see more information. And then in the cell phone video, it was more difficult because it was from farther away to see it. So I think all of them are valuable, but I think not any one of them should be the defining factor. Because in the Olango case, what you saw was, we've seen the videos before, aside from the close-up and slowed motion, but we also have additionally 6 witnesses that were interviewed. And those 6 witnesses told us from their vantage point what they observed, and that vantage point and what they observed was essentially what the officer observed.
One more question. After these findings and justifying the trust in the community, how important is on the message from the district attorney to all the agencies that have been involved in these cases and the national situation about shooting and things like that? How important is the trust of the community after they see this and they are justified? Are they approaching the different agencies to the community to make them understand what the situation is, especially for the trust?
law enforcement in general, and our office in particular, have reached out to all the communities that we serve. And we are, because of the national dialogue, we continue to face issues with trust, and that's something we're working very diligently on. But it's going to take some time. And so we talk to members of the community, both in the community, but we also bring them to us to talk. And we answer questions along the way about, that's why I take such great pains to try and explain the law, because if you're not versed in the law, you may think, well, why don't we just, issue a case and let a jury decide? Because that's not how we do it. That's not what the law is here. So we try to explain that with them as well, answer questions. But I think the greater good that can come from this is to open that discussion, dialogue, and really, do a honest assessment of where we are, what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how we can do it better.
Understanding that each case is different, has its own set of circumstances, do you see yourself releasing video sooner rather than later? In other words, before a news conference like the one we're at today in upcoming cases. Do you see that happening in the future?
Generally not, because as the officer involved shooting protocol calls for, we are waiting for the decision about whether or not there is criminal liability. Because if a criminal case is filed, then that evidence won't be released until it's in the context of a criminal case. But we have done, I think, a pretty good job at prioritizing these investigations. And I think if you look at how long each one of these taken, and you did the average of it, I think it was about 85 days. So we have taken that prioritization seriously, and we continue to do that, and we're tracking to make sure, because we know the public is interested in these. But there is always that exception, and if there is something that causes us concern, we will talk about it together to make a determination about when to release that.
Bonnie, did all of that play into your personal decision or your decision to personally go to the scene?
No, I have always gone to the scene where there are controversial shootings. So, and the purpose for me, we all learn in different ways. I like to see where it happened, how it happened, position people where everything was, so that when I'm telling you about it, I can fully comprehend what actually happened. And that provides me a better framework. And then when I look at the evidence, and there were lots of pages in this evidence and lots of photos and videos, I understand it when I look at it in the context of that walkthrough.
Bonnie, quick question. No charges being brought against any of these cases, of course, today. In your 14 years, have you tried any bad shoot cases in San Diego?
Yes.
You have?
We prosecuted a police officer from Oceanside. He was off duty, but officers are on duty 7/24. He shot into a vehicle, hit a mother and an 8-year-old. We filed charges, and the jury acquitted in that case. All right, that's a wrap. Thank you very much. I have the vape facsimile if you want to look at it.